So I had to turn that off because I don't want to overdo it. But it's been nice sitting here picnicking for a while. Oh wow, you can actually see me. I think the camera's gotten better. I don't know if this is a bit of an obtuse area for me to spend time, but it's one of the most amazing places I've sat. Look at all these trees falling. So I wish my father well. I'll never see him again. I try to make my peace with that. I don't know. I don't think it is. Honestly, it's weird. Well, this isn't very good, actually. Well, to life, everyone. The sun's coming through again. It's a good place for me to sit. Years ago, I learned that I have frog medicine, which is connected to plantain and purification. It's gonna expose my back to the sun. And plantain and purification, and I'm sitting here in the sun. There's like 9 or 10 little plantain plants around me. Ugh. And then purifying bear medicine, porcupine medicine. Right? Someone tries to touch you, they get your quills. Otherwise, you can roam around free like a bear, which is like the center of the medicine wheel. Imagine being at the center of the medicine wheel. That sounds like a lot of responsibility. It's like, I'm turning the whole medicine wheel, motherfucker. North, south, I got it covered. I don't know. There's native people. If they ever invited me to their reservation, I'd ask them if anyone could teach me more about, anything. But the thing is, here's the problem though, and it would never happen really because I wouldn't be able to absorb what they told me. In a strange sort of way, I've been around native people, and what I've learned is that you have to be able to absorb information emotionally. I'm not saying this is them. I'm saying this is me and maybe white people. Is that I find they have so much to offer, such a maturity in their relationship with nature, that you see, pointy-headed white women and stuff who don't understand native people at all, and they're so condescending and racist. And it's like you have to feel where they're coming from. You have to feel the richness of their society. You learn by feeling it, because white people were turned off of our feelings, and their entire richness of the highest, what is considered by white anthropologists, the highest level of society in Earth's entire history. Higher than Rome and Greece and everything else. But even though it's sort of talked about the least, We really hated those motherfuckers for some reason. And look at the results. Look at what we've done. Do you want your children to grow up in a world where they still have to say, look what we did to the native man? I mean, the best thing you can do is learn to listen to the native society. Don't bother native people, and listen to what their people have to offer. Just listen. If it's uncomfortable, then get at a farther distance and listen from there. You don't have to go and listen to native drumming every day of your life and think like, if I don't like this, I'm just a white bastard. You just take in anything from anywhere. Just really, like, you can walk by a totem pole, read the description of the totem pole if it's been generously donated. Read it. If it's sitting and being re-earthed, sit on it. Have a smoke. Sip some water. Think about what you're sitting on. Think about why these trees became so important. What is it about this genius of carving that's recognized all over the world? What is important about these symbols? See, carvers are working with symbols. They're like writers, right? These symbols must be pretty important. They must encompass a lot, and they're putting their physical energy into it. It's important enough to them, like something could be really important to you, and what if I couldn't tell how important or why it was important to you? And what if, in the absence of that ability, I had gained the ability to want to rid the earth of your existence? By any means, even accidentally. I gotta go. Oh, no, it's not. Do you practice it? We try to figure out your business. So colorful and my intention to your dogs yesterday. This is it. Okay. I don't know what strange theory you're using about dogs that involves them being able to see color at all. Let's go. We're heading back. Heading back home. I'm gonna get my gloves on. Oh. Yeah. I keep thinking I'm gonna see a bear. What does that have to do? Cover? Yes? Any thoughts on that? Yeah. I don't want you talking that way to me. I don't think you should. Schnappa choppa, schnappa choppa choppa che. Hoop schnappa, hoon schnappa hey. Well, that was my talk about family. And see that guy? He's quiet. He probably doesn't have a lot of people to talk to. That's sadness personified. I don't want that to be me one day. I like to think that I've made choices in my life that were the best choice I can make. But who knows? Cutting my dad off, for instance, which to me was just like, I mean, when someone hurts you enough times and is sadistic and speaks in creepy ways to you, you know, you're down to the point of like writing your dad letters, like pleading with him to understand that you just can't do certain things to human beings and expect them to trust you. And that look at the scale and nature of violence, and there's just to no avail. And what are you really talking to then? You've now gone to fisticuffs with a mental illness, and you know that's. I'm here to tell you, as sad as it may seem and obvious it may seem to some people, it didn't get me anywhere. Except maybe accused of having a mental illness, right? I just didn't have the clout. You know, in families of abuse, like, what kind of clout do you have? Are you someone people like? And so when my dad thought I was, you know, gonna be an easy one to just push out the house, he was delusional. You know, and then all of a sudden I wasn't useful to him anymore. And then when I was useful to him, it was only because he could steal things from me, you know, and disrespect me. It was like I was nothing to him anymore. And he's admitted this to me, you know. And it's like, okay, so you could take me when I'm most vulnerable and be more cruel to me than anything in the world and deprive me of a safe home to live in return for extorting thousands of dollars from me, and just saying sorry covers all of it while you're in the midst of attempting to extort property from my mother, you know, and using a crisis situation that you haven't really done anything but encourage in order to leverage a way to buy her house and or leverage her out of the house, which is like, I don't know, a little hard to take, and so on. And really, I guess, depends on how you look at it, in some sense. And then I can sort of see my dad's side a little bit, because my mom invited him to live there, and had been flirting with him for months in Europe while spending her second husband's money. And one day just decided she didn't want him there anymore, and started threatening him and spitting anger at him. And that's when things changed. That's when my dad probably just said, oh, that's the mother of my children, the alcoholic, talking. And what happens is that you don't take her that seriously. You can't believe anybody would talk to you that way, threaten him. And so he probably found it a little hard to take and tried to sort of settle things down. But my mom gets on the warpath and has decided that you're not supposed to be there, even though she's invited you to be there. And a lot of women who've been sexually abused, they'll do this, right? And she just chomped down on my dad's testicles, essentially initiating sexual abuse against him, right? So now he goes into survival mode. This is when my mom invites me into her home after I've had the most important surgery of my life, fixing my body from the last time I had to deal with my mom and my family from multiple dislocations. And I come into this home and I rest my head on this pillow, but nothing is as my mom has told me. The house is not safe, it's not peaceful. She has the house in complete financial doom. She's angered, insulted, dishonored, and disgraced the family of her second husband, who passed away the year before, and already has fears that my mom is going to mess up everything, but wants to help her and leaves her a house and a bunch of money. And his children don't like her any more than my mom's children seem to like him. But I think he's not a bad guy. Because I felt him. I felt that my mother and him had something, except that my mother tanked it. My mother tanked it. And that's what she does. He bought a house with her, and this was a big deal for both of them. And the first day they moved in, which is beautiful by the ocean side, a few blocks away from the ocean, and they were going to go for a walk together to discover the area together. Remember, these are retired people. This is their last chance at love. This is his last chance at love. And my mom decides, you're not going to control me, and goes for a walk by herself. Comes back, and he's like, do you want to go for a walk? She's like, oh, I already did. So what? You don't control me. But, she, to this day, she says, I don't understand why he was so upset. And so that's my mom escaping, because he didn't know she'd been raped when she was 5. She can't fully commit to this guy. She has to escape. She's already kind of treating him like he's a predator. And what happens when you get into a close situation like that with a man, and you treat him like he's a predator, which what female rape victims are going to do, he's going to start to look more like one. Because you're going to upset him. And they don't know what's happening. And how many women are abused who shouldn't be, or men who die from female abuse who shouldn't, because women are angry or treat men like predators. So every time, and it happens, that any female treats me as an outsider, as a predator, as suspicious, I take note of it every time. Every time a woman comes up to me who I think is suspicious and doesn't have appropriate boundaries with me. When you add up all the other sexual assault, right, and you think, I think a lot of men could probably say that they know a lot about being treated as though predators by women in a very ad hoc basis, right? Ad hoc prima facie, sine qua non, quid pro quo, oh no, oh no. It's all the Latin I know. So I think a lot of women basically treat men as though predators and sexual objects, and offer themselves and can get sex from men, but don't have any real interest in men. And some of those men might be predators themselves, or just men who are learning about women, or have been around a lot of dominant, aggressive women all their life, or have been sexually abused themselves. Now, what do you think is going to happen if we don't talk about that? What do you think is happening every day in the world? Combine that with alcohol, children, bills, wars, pestilence, disease, right? Not being able to tell people about, or even yourself, what the fuck happened to you, that you've landed in some abusive domestic situation, men and women. I can't do it by myself. I can't do that. I'm not delusional. I don't think I can work out all the world's problems. Nice plane. But we'll walk home, we'll warm up, we'll see how we do. Okay? I'll do the best I can for my children, my people. This grief in my if I've got the sadness in me, let's get it out. All in all, I would say this is on the positive side for me. You know, it's shock, yes. He's a gentle man, my pastor. He's actually a gentle man. He's seen me enough times. I think one day we might chat a bit. I think I missed my turn off. Oh, look at this. Oh. Huh. Whew. I'm coming home, Mom. Mama, I'm coming home. That'd be a good memoir. Mommy, I'm coming home. Maybe Mama. Mommy, Mama. I got Mama, I'm coming home for adults. Mommy, I'm coming home for children. And the children's book would be like, Mommy, when I'm all alone in a tone. All alone. Mommy, I want to come home. Where are you and Daddy? Imagine if you had that on a tape for children. I hope you don't abandon me existentially or psychologically. I hope you don't abandon me because I have normal emotions. Thank you very much for listening. The tape is over, short attention spans, and so prevailing as they do. Thank you for buying this tape from me, but also listening to it with me because it's really for you. Thank you. You're funny. You're such a funny man. You're a funny man, but you're a real comedian. Aha, very funny. I bet you'll slip today. I hope not. Let's see. Mama, I'm coming home for adults. I think that was for adults. I think it was for both. I think we did both at once. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Hey, oh, hey. Oh, hey. And what my mom has a lot of is modesty, I think. You know, a certain modesty to her, a certain something. I mean, you could never tell her too many positive things, but she doesn't like too much sweetness. But I feel like I've always wanted to get to know her. And if all I really get to know is that she was raped when she was 5, and everything else is shit, and I met her maybe at an okay time in her life, and she had a guy that maybe kind of loved her, or not, and she'd already kind of knew that it was not. But she liked having children, or so she thought, but there was so much anger in her system that she couldn't provide the appropriate nourishment, which is probably part of the reason my siblings and I have had a lot of anger issues, for one. I don't even like sort of putting myself in with them because I'm not violent like they are, but sorry. And you know, once you spent years having to deal with the shock of the violence of your siblings alone, like, you're walking a different path, for sure. You know, and a path that nobody really wants to know anything about. That wherever I go in this world, that would be such a big part of who I am, is being afraid of my family. And it's awful. It's absolutely awful. Every day of my life, the shock that's put me in since I was probably a very young age. So you can imagine sort of how many years of shock live inside my body, and had to worry about my father punching me when I was a teenager in front of my own family, or humiliating me in public, and threatening me, pushing me, extorting money out of me, physically threatening me, and it's a little hard to take being threatened by someone who's 150 pounds heavier than you, and all you want to do is read astronomy books or learn how to windsurf, or you've already written a couple small novels, but your father doesn't care. And I'd say, who are you? You're not an intelligent person? What happened to my father? My father kind of, from a child's perspective, is like a really good actor. And maybe he was happier then. And so you see how things come up, and then you live in a world where people tell you to forget, to put things away. The one part of the world tells you never to forget history because you'll repeat it. The other part, emotionally, psychiatrically, they want people to forget. They want to minimize their anxieties and say, hey, that's just a genetic, chemical, or a misreading of reality based on some atavistic compulsion. As though being anxious about your survival safety is erroneous in a world where everyone is busy every day to survive. But you're not allowed to survive from things the world doesn't acknowledge are things you have to worry about surviving from. And how many children, how many people are anxious who have a reason to be, who are suffering from chronic diseases that are related to the anxiety because they're being abused. And so we don't have a world that really tunes into that. You're not going to have a TV show with a forensic child psychologist who figures out what's really happening, and it's always the parents, and it's always the oppressive banking system. It's just not going to happen, right? There is no free media, right? That's a lie. There's no free press, really. Oh, sure, you say you've got blogs, YouTube channels. I've had 3 channels deleted in the last week. I mean, come on. Google doesn't like me. Obviously. Let's find some forest. I'd take a pee or something. And, so it's hard. Maybe another crap at some point. I think I'll take the other trail down here. It's good. It feels like my system's eliminating things. Get things moving. Oh, good. We did well. Okay. And we're heading home. Good for us. Got a little intestinal jazz going on down there. Okay. Felt the spirit of the bear today. Be the third bowel movement today. It's pretty good. So it speaks to the power of my processing abilities. But really, if you keep talking, you're going to resonate with your body. It's just that people don't like negative emotions. I can understand. I mean, if someone was giving a seminar on negative emotions, I probably wouldn't go like, oh, I deal with that every day, so I don't need a seminar. But what would it be a seminar? It'd be like managing them, getting away from them. And yet, we're supposed to acknowledge history, just not our emotions about history. Now, granted, let's be cautious here. Absolutely, there are good reasons to, I'm sure, within one's home environment, one's own children, your own personal religion, so forth, your sense of what's right or wrong, human behavior, love, so on, to have emotional restraint or all these other things that have their place in the world. It's just that when people are in shock and they're being abused, please don't subject anyone to the same standards that you would put to someone who hasn't been abused. If you can, have the patience to do that. Because remember, however difficult that is for you, the person who's been abused is going through a lot worse than your stress at not being able to get people to conform to your idea of reality, right? I would say that to all clinicians in the world, right? The biggest thing to know about shock is that you don't know anything about it, especially if you're living in it, which you are. That's number two. And all clinicians in the world should know that. In a sense, you have to assume the world is its worst if you're going to do your best for your clients, right? Look at it. Look at it like Machiavelli for clinicians. Machiavelli said, you can look at the world the way you want to or the way it is. And that for him, in many practical senses, those weren't the same things. That people would look at the world inevitably in a way that was as far from the way it was as possible. And so you had room to do certain things to make the world in your image. Right? I mean, he's not trying to be helpful to the human race, but it can be. So, it's up to us. And I didn't get to walk in Qualicum today, but I kind of feel a connection to it right now. And I would say it's a feeling I'm getting from the river. It's like, it's up to us. And part of it is like, okay, you got to spend every day surviving, but you also got to spend every day thinking about what is it you're trying to survive. A job isn't the cure to all ills, right? Nothing that we do is a cure to all ills. I spend a lot of my time waiting for things to happen. That's kind of my special talent as a child. Especially as I got older, I would ride my bike after I graduated high school and dropped out of college, and I'd be riding my bicycle and thinking, and I was kind of a poet, but I would think, this is going to take an eternity. This is going to feel like an eternity, the next few years of my life. And I accepted that. That was nature's message to me. I know it doesn't sound very nice, but that's basically what happened. It was better that nature is honest with me and lets me be honest with myself. Because that's, if you knew in retrospect what I knew, and you saw what I saw, you'd be like, okay, fair enough. It's going to feel like an eternity. I mean, did I think that I had some powerful connection? No, it's a thought that I had. It felt like it resonated strongly with me. I'm like, that was good. This is going to be an eternity. Obviously, I can recollect it. Right? Okay, here's a deer trail. Is it the sun? It's a pathway, as I said. Ooh, mushrooms. Wow. Oh no, okay, I thought that was like a big thing of bear crap for a second. Oh, wow. That's an interesting tree. Yeah. Good. You know, although I've seen plenty of happier days, it's not so bad. Oh. So, a nice discreet little shit. All kinds of little mushrooms in here. I'm just gonna wind my way back intuitively and get stuck in the brush at the same time. Okay, good. Yeah, so lots of negative energy coming towards me. How much it's penetrating at this point, I don't know. My shitting is actually quite untroubled, so it's good. This and almost like deer shits. Yeah. So it's a change in my constitution. Everyone should walk around with a reasonable amount of safety. Okay? Well, this is a safety issue. Well, I think one of my greatest talents is the ability to sustain violence. You know, move it through my system and then go on. Kind of like vulture medicine. And I always think like this. I built up a lot of good value in how I approach life and the nature around me. So as a result, like, you know, at the end of the day, the best way to win a fight is to have nature's support. You don't have to be a samurai warrior. You just have to be a good person. You know? So yeah, we can all get angry enough to wish violence or to imagine fighting someone and ripping out their larynx. Someone would do it in a movie, but at the end of the day, you just need the support of nature. You know, because nature helps you to right wrong. But it's like humans as humans in certain positions and growing in certain ways. Like, you're going to be in vulnerable positions sometimes. And I find the positive. Like, well, I can bring back more strength to my home and family. I'm safer in the long run, knowing who and what is around me, where I'm walking. So to know that I have, you know, my first predator in the area is a male and or affiliates, and a female, or two females really, and like they're your enemy. Okay, that's what they've chosen to be. Choose to be my enemy, I'll have to treat you like my enemy. What else can I do? That's a scary thing. Last thing I said, I said, yeah, you're a scary dude. You're scared. Yeah, here's some more. I asked him if he wanted some more, and
And he got some more from me. He asked for some more. So we'll see if he wants more today. I don't think he wants any more from me. He might want it, but he can't get it. It's not in his own best interest now. Find a way to at least trick a sociopath into going against their own best interest. So when they really have to, right, they know when they've done something wrong, right, when they really have to. You put the pressure on a good person, certainly they can doubt themselves, their actions, their choices in life. We all can. But they're not wrong. It's good to be able to doubt your choices. It's good. It's part of the hunger that connects us to heaven. The vulnerability and the modesty to go, hey, you know what? I don't know if everything I do is right. And I'm able to admit that. But I don't have to labor under all the doubt of which I'm capable 24 hours a day. Because my judgments get tested harshly. They get tested by very harsh circumstances where people really do commit acts of violence against me. Okay? And I have a kind of mind that can just feel all of them. Right? I can feel any amount in range and depth. And I fully feel its effects. So my body tells the story. Oh, and something I was going to talk about. I pulled a stick out of these thorns, Thor as a protector, before this man started finishing his sexual assault with me. And I want my mom to be healthy and bring strength home. But it was neat that the staff that I picked up, the protective medicine, out of the thorns, the protector thorn, which the last time that happened involved strategic use of my camera. Also, some very, very violent white people, white women I should say, gathering a group of people to stare at me and glare at me and to threaten me physically from across the river. It would prove not the last time that would happen, by the way. So, but it didn't achieve as much an effect as one and two females who did it one day, who had much more malicious intent. These people were convinced that I was trespassing on a wildlife preserve. So in a sense, they had a principled interest in glaring at me, even though it was wrong and unscrupulous. I let them. And then they saw my camera sitting there in the thorns that were holding it up, and they dispersed like in a second. Right? They didn't know who I was. Now, then they're thinking about who is this? So it forced them to look into a mirror at what they were doing. And that's important, right? For us to look into a mirror sometimes and see what's going on. And I laid the sword or the staff down beside me last night, beside my bed. I wanted it close to me, and I woke up, and the dog was sleeping on it. His head was resting on it. He likes anything to do with me, I notice. Makes him feel comfortable. And so I brought that sword home as an energy of protection, and I've scattered some other energies along the way. And where I'm walking to right now will be the circle, which is a tribute to men who have died from the sexual abuse of females. In a sense, I mean, the English makes it a bit ambiguous, but these females have probably been sexually abused, and this abuse is distributed through a kind of mortifying effect that these women happen to have upon men and the fathers of their children and their sons and so forth. We don't know all the circumstances, but we know that. And I've studied this for a long time. As much as you can, it's very shocking. Who wants to spend your time doing that? But I had a good friend who died from this, and had a good passing and so forth, if you can say such a thing. He made it. So, hey. Nice dog. Hi. Nice dog. Hey. Hi. Nice to meet you. Nice to meet you. That was just a sniff. Oh, you can bite. Take care. That dog did a kind of join up with me. So I stopped and picked up a stick, and then the dog smelled. And he was old, mature Labrador. And then he had my stick. He didn't want it at first, and then he smelled it, and then he took it. So he's taking his time, he's smelling, he's assessing. He had to smell first. It's like, cool, eh? And the woman was a little taciturn, but I left her smiling. It's nice. I'm such a nice person. I didn't even stop me. Camera is always a witness to the dogs, and buddies had this sleeping on it early today. I think, earth willing, I'll get home early. I think my mom prefers if I get home earlier. I'm not sure if that's true. I felt better today. I still do want to walk somewhere else. My mom, I asked her if you can pick a day and maybe take me out to Qualicum and pick me up, because I would just so enjoy it, going to that river, Little Qualicum River. It's so, I don't know, maybe I'm anxious. I'm sharing a lot of difficult shock-related things out here. To take a day off and just walk somewhere else would be a nice balance. Or I'd like to go to Vancouver too. I also want to do something with my mom. So I said we got to go for a walk one day. So the day started out chilly. It's probably getting about as warm as it's going to get right now. I don't know if it's noonish or 1 o'clock. But we're going to head to the circle I made if it's still there. Pay tribute to Ken, my friend. I don't hate his wife. I knew her. She was a charming woman, but, conscientious, soft, feminine. I could see why he felt for her. But there's something else involved. I don't want it to be involved in hating women per se, although I think that as an advocate of men, myself and all men should want to be an advocate of men, I guess. You have the value of being so, because you have a voice in men's concerns, of course, and must. It's important, it's imperative, it's sacred, and it's tried, just like women's voices are tried, and at least similarly so, and to great and wide degree. I hate it when the human voice, humans are trained, and then you lose your voice. I was informed that my father used to stutter a lot. Stutter. Man. Which means his words would catch in his throat because there was such a flutter in his heart. He was so scared. That's my dad. And there's this man, he was abusive, and he didn't connect to me as a young man. And his survival was threatened by my mother in every way, so by the time I needed more from him, there was nothing to give, and it created conflict and violence. I wanted something that my father himself had never had, and had no good reason to want to provide for me. He had already done so much. You have to get a job and leave. If you can't do that, well, what do you think you're going to get? Shame. Right? Shame. So one of the things I think it's good to deal with is shame. Which, let me be clear, it's a word, and a word is a spell. And it conjures up the spirit of something, and if you feel like that's a bad spirit, then move on. Because shame can be a bad thing. People would say, like, let's not even talk about shame. Well, why would you even want to even mention that? So that's perfectly fine. You know? There's a place to say, hey, let's just not talk about it. It's nothing. You shouldn't feel that way. Hey. Hi. Hello, beautiful dog. Hey. Bit of a shy female dog. Anxious, really. But anyway. Good luck with some of the dogs out here. Oh yeah, this is where that guy was doing violence. Oh. I spit. And banish all the vortices of violence from this place. You are miserable and despicable people, and you shall not trespass on my peace of mind any further. In every extent that you have, you shall be repulsed. And with all that is in the earth, and the power of my great mother and great father, and all that is good and true and strong in me that I have even yet to imagine of myself, I, so saith, banish thee and all of thine from my rightful estate. Here and everywhere I wish to pass in utter safety, and a pox on you in every metaphorical and potentially literal way for fucking with me in every fucking potential way, past, present, and future. So saith the solemn man. Oh, that was perfect. Thank you. Got a good bounce off of that. It's like just taking a place and making like a speaking tube or whatever. And for me, yeah, I'm happy to say, sure. I mean, is shame an emotion? It's like, well, I suppose like it may be something you might think is very childlike. Maybe a child can feel ashamed. Maybe their face can go red, or at worst case they could piss themselves. What's the difference between fear and shame and that kind of thing? Well, your guess is as good as mine. I think I would treat a word that I have no ready grasp of how I would describe that to someone. I would never try to persuade someone to like, hey, you should think about this, like a religion, and like, think about how much shame you might have in your body or something. I don't think that would be a pleasant conversation to have, but I think that at times in my life I found it useful to consider the word. I'm not sure how to describe it, and so it could be a blessing or a curse, I suppose, but I think you're safe if you're trying to just acknowledge things that hurt and you can't find a better word for them, then maybe you could call it shame. You could call it shock. And it's a shame, right, that we get shocked. So shame is not a happy feeling, I'm sure. What do I think about when I think of shame? I think of my mom. I think of like the fact that she was raped shamed her, dishonored her. To make a human being feel like they're less and to be forced to live in the same body with someone who shouldn't have ever been made to feel less, but has been treated as though you're less. If you're a hammer and you're treated like a vagina, if you're a happy person and you're treated like someone who should be a receptacle for a couple of your brother's penises, so they've defiled you. It's an abomination, right? You should want to get back at them for that, shouldn't you? You could now you see, taking my mother's example, and she's not like a feminist necessarily, but I hear her. I don't like feminism, and I'll call it a religion, and I'll say they're a bunch of awful, violent cunts more often than not. But I will say also that as a victim of violent crime from men and women, but mostly women, and them from mostly women, and all the other stuff you don't want to feel and hear and see in that realm, but maybe have to or choose to, as I do. And you think about the natural and rightful rage that my mother could have in all women, and why they would want to do anything that such and so many male rapists fucking uncles and brothers and fucking policemen or whoever the fuck they are in all of human history that have put any girl on the ground and fucked her. And then add to that any man who cares what kind of mental disorders he had. The fact is, it's not her fucking problem. And maybe a combination of alcohol and drugs or whatnot. Even if she feels like she's okay kissing and letting him go to first base and then takes everything else. And everything in between. That I'm sure if you're out there and you're a man, you would never do to someone. And let's all just take a moment and hope that we don't. And be really fucking careful, you know? And then you can enjoy yourself, right? Safely. I'm not a feminist and I hate feminists, but I absolutely have a heart for understanding the ferocious amount of wrongness that someone in our family could be raped, a woman in this case, a girl. And the ferocious anger and the ferocious motivation to turn that rage and that hatred of men or of wrongness that men have done and can do and will do again into education. And that's what violence should be turned into. But feminism is co-opted by the state. So it will never do anything but just create more violence and stir people up. Because no one you'll listen to on YouTube who's a feminist will talk this way. Like, just honestly, just talk, just fucking talk. Just tell people what happened to you. Tell people how you feel. Acknowledge that your rage and your sense of wrong as a human being does not permit any woman to be raped. And every single fucking person in the world and every resource we have should be mobilized to stopping it, which isn't practical. And so you look at language, you look at gender studies programs, you look at books, academia, changing laws, right? And then it came to, say, accommodating gender differentiation, non-traditional gender differentiation, as I would think in some sense an escape route for oppressed people, because this is a sex problem in that, you know, rape isn't sex, and so it is wrong. It's an abomination. And it changes women's hormones, changes their minds, changed my mom's mind. Still a wonderful, amazing being. And I hold on to that. And I've worked with that mind. There's not a lot of people qualified to do what I do with my mother. And the risks that I've taken. The scariest thing in the world is that I've had to cross my mother a little bit to protect her from the alcoholic scumbags that she sometimes invites into her life. And risk losing my home. And risk being, like, seriously threatened and homeless to protect her. Right? And somehow hope, as she manages to see, that it's out of love I've put myself at considerable risk because I've inserted myself into a codependent relationship you're having, and you're permitting someone to hurt you. And I can't allow that. Right? And it's over now. But it's only like a month over. It's still fresh. It's a month and a half. And I'm like, and shocks kind of age over time. You're like, whew. Compared to this guy with this other local fucking family is nothing. You just sit and wait to see what they're going to do. I just hope he never sees me in the woods whacking off with a telephoto lens. What if two guys are out in the woods with telephoto lenses looking at each other whacking off? They're like, I got photos of you. I got photos of you, man. I'm going to run a facial recognition on you. Oh, I got you, man. You're Ty Borden. Oh, yeah? You're Smith John. Born 1936. Whoa, that makes you like over 100 years old, dude. Not quite, genius. Okay, but close. I'm going to masturbate again. This time I'm going to use my gay hand. Wow, me too. I use both my hands in my mouth. What are you talking about at this point? Are you really aware that nobody is listening to this? People in the world listening to it are like, does this guy think anyone's listening to this? And who is he talking to? Who are you talking to? Who am I talking to? Who are you talking to? Seriously, like, who are you listening to? Look in the mirror. You know, pause this video, look in the mirror and ask yourself, who am I? Over and over. Who am I? And just stare and like just be like, you're gonna get bored. You know why? Because the answer's not fucking there. Because you can't get everything out of a mirror. You see, you can't see who you are in a mirror. Did you ever realize that when you were young? It's kind of like witchcraft, right? You can't see everything you are in a mirror, can you? Or a photograph, right? Right? The human spirit cannot, in your beauty, cannot be put into 2 dimensions. But other people can see you in more dimensions sometimes than you can see yourself. But they can't feel what you're feeling. They can't know the extraordinary odyssey that you've been through. And what's more, that we don't live in a world or a so-called culture that allows us to share, except through films that really, for all the incredible, sympathetic, human, and often very abominable things that you see, don't really come close to adequately speaking for us and for the odyssey of our lives. So that I suffered the interest in writing the book when I was young, I could kind of understand that I felt like I had something to say. After growing up with TV, I still had something to say. So that was pretty good. My father should have been like, whoa, Landon still has something to say after all the abuse we put him through. Jesus, I'm scared what that's going to be. Imagine if you come from a Cockney family, which actually, Cockney is a very rich language stem, a language trunk really, for all of the British Isles. And I'm happy to share it, by the way, with other races or dialects. And but it's just a nice thing to think about. And because the greatest of languages are musical, essentially. So you can kind of rule out Yiddish, right? There is Sanskrit to some degree, maybe Semitic. I think some aspects of I think there's lots of different Semitic dialects, Often like ancient philology, you're looking at Semitic symbols. It doesn't mean they're Jewish. They're pre-Jewish Semitic symbols. Judaism just sort of took on the idea of being Semitic, but we all have Semitic roots, especially everybody. I think you could exclude some people if you wanted to. I wouldn't deprive anyone of having Semitic roots, so how can any of us be really anti-Semitic? It's more like the entire world is anti-Semitic, and it's anti-us, right? It's created a standard for science that is as non-musical as possible. So when I hear a little music of the river, I think, that's a good day. And I might even hear some down here too. Come and sit in the sun for a bit. happy to meet you. Da, da, da. So happy to know you. Da, da, da. So you and me and you. Ha da ba di ba di da di. Da do ba di. Ha da da di. I had to get a couple alcoholics out of my house once, and out of my life. Lots of alcoholics, and they become unnecessarily territorial, aggressive. They become dominant. One of this lady I had, I mean, she was always dominant. And they do it like automatically. It's just how they roll. You know, it's interesting to think about. I talk negatively about the police, but I doubt a single or two single police officers feel invincible. You know, like maybe they should tell people, "Hey, we're not invincible. We walk around. And we think we misuse our authority, but we're not invincible." You know, oh, that's cool. We're not invincible.
Bum, 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 bum. Something was planted in our bodies. Something was planted with our minds. Something was planted like heaven in the earth. And every time I see a number 7 upside down or a number 2, I think of what's been planted in me and you. I think about the heaven inside my body, growing out of every acre of earth and every cubic centimeter of space where any air or any kind of face can dwell. I know that the most sacred heaven has been planted in that face and in that place. It is planted in us. Heaven is planted in the earth. Heaven. Though the Father's own seed is planted in the earth. In heaven were a mother and a father. And the earth were like the womb of heaven. And the Father provided the seed of heaven. And the heavens did proceed to grow upon the earth, and great perinations of all the strength of our peoples, from moment to moment, from day to day, from hour to hour, from breath to breath, and all those other moments shirked off, because what is a moment? It's just the mind of a monster who only sees in one dimension, because there's so much more than now. Isn't it? It's so much more than now. We can acknowledge among all the difficult things that we may acknowledge, let's just acknowledge what is other than now. And what was, and what will be, and what augurs, and what threatens, and what changes may there be, and what accidents and fatalities, and what changes and irascibilities, and everything else that presses in on us that is not now. That even now we could sense, but that we were limited to the moment. To get away from the anxieties that we're supposed to get away from, because they don't mean anything, apparently. Wow. But we don't want to repeat the past, so history means something, but your feelings don't.